We live in a global society which puts us into close contact with people from every corner of the world. On today's show, we're going to talk about how we can celebrate and utilize our differences right here at Montgomery College. Coming up next on MC 101 on The Real. Hello and welcome to MC 101 on The Real. I'm Dr. Beverly Walker-Griffea, Senior Vice President for Student Services at Montgomery College. The greater Washington, D.C. area, including Montgomery County, is a region with one of the most diverse populations in the world. And where that diversity is most reflected is right here at Montgomery College. I'm going to give you some of Did You Knows. Out of more than 60,000 students enrolled at MC in the fall of 2013, 71% of those students are non-white. But that's not the only way in which we are diverse. 8% of our students are non-U.S. citizens, representing 164 different countries. 38% receive some form of financial aid, 5% have a disability, and many of our students are military veterans. With all of this diversity comes many differences in culture, language, age, religious beliefs, political ideas, sexual orientation, socioeconomic levels. It goes on and on. So how do we celebrate our differences and use them to broaden our world views? I'm excited today because we've gathered a panel of experts to talk about this important topic. Our first guest is Dr. Tony Hawkins. Dr. Hawkins is the Instructional Dean of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at our Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. Next, we have Titiana Tuma, Assistant Registrar on the Rockville campus. Our third guest is Jason Franklin. He's a former U.S. Marine, and we congratulate him and we thank him for his service and thank him for being here as well. But he's currently our interim program manager of veteran services at the Combat to College program. Sitting beside Jason is a woman that you all know, and I'm happy to introduce and I'm happy to have on our program for the very first time, Dr. Darion Pollard, the president of Montgomery College. And last but not least, we have our Montgomery College student representing the Rockville campus today. He is the Student Senate Vice President, Carlos Mejia-Ramos. So everyone, please give a warm welcome. Dr. Hawkins, we're going to start with you as the co-chair of the Closing the Achievement Gap Committee. You've been tasked with bringing lower performing students up to a higher academic standard. What characteristics do these students share? And what do you view Montgomery College should be doing to address those issues?
The group that I co-chaired with Professor Hilda Smith was looking at the achievement gap between our general student population and our special population of students who are either African American or Latino students. We were looking specifically at certain areas where they were not performing as well as the overall student population, and looking specifically at where they come from, their communities and family lives, certain characteristics about leadership and other non-cognitive behaviors, and what the college can do to help promote and support these students of color. We, as a committee, have provided a series of recommendations that include mentoring, both by faculty as well as our counseling and professional staff, as well as really getting out into the communities so that we can dispel for many of the students the mystique of attending Montgomery College and participating in higher education. There are certain developmental issues that we hope to be addressed that will look at a student's need for tutoring and other academic support so they can perform well, but really looking at some of the non-cognitive behaviors where they can make critical connections and find success as students.
Titiana, you're representing the admissions office today, but I believe you've been a student with us as well. Can you talk about how we handle admitting and registering our students with such a diverse student body, and how's that going?
Sure. I just want to start that to say that the United States of America is a country very rich in diversity, and I want to say diversity is our strength, and we are all diverse people, and we come from all over the world. We all share that we are all human beings who have a need of love, respect, and to feel valuable. So diversity is not only focusing on race, it's also like some people are challenging, they have challenge in some area, so we should be aware of that as well. So here at MC, we meet people from different or variety of races, sexes, ages, gender, ethnic backgrounds, and religion, people who has some special need, seniors, so they need extra help, and we have to be aware of that. So the admission office, basically, it's where all students and community members can find information. Also, we can help them how to process their application, registration, to help them further to reach their needs so they can be successful. And we make sure that everybody feel happy when they leave the admission office. And myself, actually, I feel very committed to treat with respect every individual person that I deal with, whatever a staff member or a student or a faculty.
Tatiana, and I want to say that I apologize. I said the wrong term. We no longer have an admissions office. We have an enrollment services office. And so I want to make that clear, because when I go back home to my office, I probably will hear about that one. Right. So, but Jason, you're up next. So can you tell us what makes a veteran different than a typical MC student?
Sure, great question. Well, probably the number one thing that would separate a veteran from the general student population would be the shared experience that veterans have, that experience of raising their right hand, being sworn in to protect the Constitution, going off and away from family, usually right after high school, and being pulled from everything that they've ever known and being placed through an indoctrination process, through in some ways mass psychology, to bring an individual from maybe a standard civilian all the way to a individual who will be a warfighter. And that process is, it's intense, it's life-altering, and it has great impact after they get out of the military and for the rest of their lives in many cases.
Well, Dr. Pollard, I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to come to this show. And I'd like for you to kind of talk about your personal background and really how does that help you lead a college?
Well, I think my personal background really defines, as anyone would, who you are. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I was a little church girl who, at the same time, grew up in a motherless home for quite some time. My mother died when I was very young. I went to high school at a magnet institution, but had to struggle from time to time. I was a little bit of a social butterfly. I would also offer, I know it's hard to believe, right? But I am the daughter of a veteran, so I have deep thoughts about patriotism. I actually signed up to go to the Marines. We can talk about that sometime. Certainly. I work every day and have taught and work with students who are immigrant students, who are first generation students, as was I. I was a student who could have been studied for the achievement gap, and I was a very active student leader on my campus. So all of those parts of who I am, I think uniquely influenced me to think about this organization in some very different ways and to understand not only the power that we have here collectively to change each other's lives, but I think what this institution does in our community is unbelievable. And every place I go, people talk about Montgomery College, a place of access, a place of excellence. And the last thing I would say about this as well is that I'm a student. I'm always in a constant state of trying to learn something. So we were just talking a minute ago about Dominican food. You know, where do I go to find Dominican food? Where can I go get new hair products for the new hairstyle I'm working? You know, so there's a whole idea of preparing yourself to be open to the diversity and at the same time not being afraid to use your diversity in a way that may help empower someone else as well.
And Carlos, we're very glad to have a student on the panel today as well.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we'd like to hear in the classroom, what are you seeing? What are the thoughts about our student population and diversity on our campuses?
That's a very good question, because the more you are interacting with your classmates, the more you're letting others know who you are, and the more you're making aware of your culture, your background, your experiences. So I think that's the neat experience of being at Montgomery College, where classes are small and where you can be a real tight community, where you can build these relationships, and that's where you get to know people. You get to be, it's kind of like being at a cultural exchange program, basically, because we are the melting pot of Montgomery County. And the more you are in the classroom, the more you're exposing yourself, the more people are learning about different cultures.
Very interesting. So that brings me, I guess, back to you, Dr. Hawkins. If you would share with us, in the classroom, how does diversity actually affect teaching?
Well, we know that students come with a variety of backgrounds and interests and experiences, along with a variety of different learning styles, and they can use that in the classroom to learn from each other, as Carlos has mentioned, because our classrooms are rich communities of diversity. We have a diverse faculty as well, who also bring a variety of backgrounds and experiences. We like to think that our classes are opportunities for sharing diversity, for sharing ideas of what makes each individual student unique and different. And in an attempt to close the achievement gap, we're hoping that our faculty recognize this diversity, recognize the things that make our students unique, can pitch to the strengths, can really support the students who have exhibited weaknesses, and utilize the classroom environment as an opportunity to share and exchange different perspectives and different ideas of what makes Montgomery College so special in an educational environment where we can learn from each other. Many of us believe that not only should mentoring and support occur in our student services area, but also our faculty and our staff and other administrators have a role to play in helping to support our students to close the achievement gap.
That's great. So Titiana, I know that last summer you went on a study abroad as a student with us. Can you share how that has affected your viewpoint of diversity?
Yeah, like my study abroad was indeed a unique life experience for me. It gave me personal growth, and as well, I have had the opportunity to meet new people, different culture, different food. Also, like, it makes me more self-confidence, adopting a noticeable flexibility to interact easy with other people and accepting others with different background and cultural identity. So that's helped me a lot. Even when I came to the college here, we have au pairs that they come from Europe a lot. So I share with them my experience. They feel like, oh, I know more about their culture, and we have that interaction, and they feel like very happy that I know about their culture.
So Jason, talking still about the classroom experiences, what do you feel that veterans bring to that classroom experience? Because I know you're also, we're very proud to say, an alum of Montgomery College.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think there's quite a few things that a student veteran can bring to the classroom. I think aside from a good work ethic that is oftentimes typical of this population, but also a certain level of, and that goes with the discipline from the military. But I also know that, for example, myself, when I went into the Marine Corps, I traveled quite a bit. I got the opportunity to go to places like Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, and actually that wasn't even that many places compared to other Marines that I've interacted with, especially since I've worked at the college. And having a person who's had a very, I don't know if I should say worldly experience, or an opportunity to see outside of their own country and see other cultures, and sometimes not necessarily seeing the prettiest parts of the other outside of this world, it brings a very specific, very unique, I should say, perspective of the world that we live in. And I think that sometimes having that perspective in a classroom can be beneficial.
So Dr. Pollard, you've had several initiatives that have been led on the college. We started off with, when I got here, the Common Student Experience, and out of that came really a strategy that we said we wanted to build community. And out of that part, build community, we built into the strategic plan the Closing the Achievement Gap initiatives. Out of that, what is it that, as our president, that you would like to see for our faculty, staff, and students going forward for the college?
You know, what I think is interesting, I actually, a couple of weeks ago, read the entire 68-page report. And what's very provocative in this report is that they offer a series of recommendations, some as simplistic as we might think of in terms of the way in which we choose to communicate with students in multi-languages and so forth. Others much more thoughtful and engaged ones about how we hire employees and how we measure student attitudes and the way we think about the ways professional development of our employees can influence the student experience. So for me, I've never been one to believe in playing small. So the perspective I have here, we've had this group of, how many people are on that task force? 80 people who are on the task force who worked multiple months to put something together. They gave us a set, and it was research-based, which I so appreciated. So the next step in this is actually do something about it. Higher education is notorious for crafting elaborate reports that can fill the volumes of library shelves forever and not doing a darn thing about it. So I don't believe that. I believe that if we want our students to be successful here, if we want our employees to be successful here and feel engaged, if we want our community to know that this is a place where they can come and be successful in, then we have to own the gap. And the gap here right now is that disproportionately students of color who are black and brown are not successful as white and Asian counterparts here. We have to own that. We have to talk about the fact that students describe experiences in classrooms that are inappropriate. We have to own that. We have to talk about the fact that we have services where people are doing the best they can, but in the midst of their hustle, they forget about the fact that we have students who have unique experiences that have to be responded to. So I'm of the belief that we are truly one of the best community colleges in the country. And we're that way because we acknowledge the fact that we have issues we have to grapple with, but we don't stop there. We say, let's figure out what we're going to do about it and use the talent of this institution to take us to that next level.
So Carlos, that leads us to you. And I guess I'd like to hear student to student. You're a student government leader. Right. So student to student, what are you all doing to really promote diversity and inclusiveness amongst yourselves?
Well, one of the things that, at the beginning of the semester or my term that we sat down with the other executive board members was, how are we going to promote the diversity of Montgomery College? Because, we may think one way, but really the needs of our students are totally different. So in terms of planning our year, we decided we wanted to host forums, and we think our needs are first, but really we need to include everybody, and we invited Dean Campen to host a forum back in the fall semester, and he really got to hear what students needed from his department, and they felt, our students felt included in the process, and that's one way that we're targeting being inclusive to other students who might not be as engaged in the process. And then as well, we work with clubs who have a diverse population of students. We have the Cultural Exchange Club, we have the MC Steppers, and there's just so much to grasp at once. So we try to work together to make sure that they know what's going on, to make sure that we are taking their opinions to heart and making sure that they know we're working towards something.
This is just really an interesting topic, but I think we want to pause now and really start looking at what are our students on our campuses wanting to ask. And so we have some videos that we have some student questions. So let's watch.
Hello, I'm Sheda Gholami Mehrabadi. I was wondering how we could create a more college life experience here at a community college, because I've noticed a lot of kids here don't have a really strong sense of community, and they really lack the interpersonal relationships that people usually build at four-year universities.
That's a great question, Shayla. So who'd like to tackle that one from the panel?
I'll start. As I was listening, the first thing that came to mind was getting involved. If you're not getting involved and putting a little effort of creating a community, creating a close group of people that you can study with, go out with, go to sporting events, participate, then that's how you're going to create that sense of being mattered or being involved, or just a sense of community that you get at four-year colleges, and you just get involved.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I actually would, just to dovetail, I think one of the unique perspectives of being on a community college is that it is not only diverse in race and in creed, but also the fact that we have individuals of all different age groups. So many, and I can say from the standpoint of being a veteran who was married while going to school, many of our student veterans have families, they have children, they have a life off the campus that they have to attend to. And I think that also applies for a large majority of our students, all students across the board. And I think that is probably just one of the unique experiences that come from being part of a community college, especially one that's as vast as Montgomery College.
Anyone else?
One of the sections in the Closing the Achievement Gap report was based on a focus group of students, and they asked that very same question. How do we replicate the four-year college experience without fraternities and fraternity houses and large study spaces and dormitories, et cetera. And there were, the recommendations include a list of opportunities for students to get together outside of the classroom that have some kind of marquee or some title to bring people together to have an experience. Also to identify study spaces and communal spaces. There was one request about the removal of the college pool table to have that returned so that there be some social outlet for students outside of going to class. So we just, as an institution, we have to think about, the students that have that desire and have that need for a four-year experience, and what can we do to provide those spaces for students to gather.
So I think we have another student video coming up, another student that has a question. So let's watch again.
My name is Michael Sklarski, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think about how studies are becoming increasingly more segregated, in that we have classes that, instead of focusing on all literature in general, focus just on women's literature or just on certain literature aspects, instead of covering literature as a topic, without gender, without race, without boundaries?
Very interesting. Michael, how would you all
Well, as a former literature teacher, I thank you. I felt that one was mine, had my name all over it. What I found very provocative about his question is that I would love to know what just literature is. I think that there are certainly movements in literature that have a very specific way of understanding and interpreting literature. Holocaust literature, women's literature, contemporary African-American literature, Chicano or Latino literature, gay and lesbian literature. So there are, because it's about a human experience. So is that you cannot decouple the humanity of a person from the way in which they choose to describe the experience of that. Or more importantly, what message they're trying to convey about that experience, true? So I think there are certainly ways in which we offered, as I had to take introduction to literature, certainly there are courses that can be offered in that regard, but they're going to be so broad that sometimes the nuances of understanding that particular genre as it relates to this literature, there are certain characteristics of feminist literature. There's also characteristics of feminist criticism of the dominant idiom of literature. So there are many ways of thinking about that. What I might offer to his point is that one of the true joys in life, I think, is to take the opportunity to learn about multiple cultures, experiences, and perspectives, always understanding how that relates to you and how it has nothing to do with you at all, and to understand someone else's perspective in a way that can challenge you. One of the best faculty members I've had in my entire life was a third-generation Japanese-American man. And I learned more about Japanese literature than I ever knew possible, Japanese-American literature in particular, because he talked about that experience. One that I may not have been able to relate to, but also one that I could see some similarities. And you can only be able to do that when you've had the exposure to that. So we can all read The Great Gatsby, we can read Moby Dick, and we can go west and find everything we need to do, but I also want you to understand the difference between womanism and feminism. I want you to understand the fact that queer identity is uniquely shaped by both the folks who wrote about it, but the contextual environment in which that occurred. And if you try to ignore that, and you strip away humanity when you do that as well.
Well, I believe we have another video question, so let's watch.
Hi, my name is Rachel Elliott. I'm very impressed with all of the diversity on campus. I came from a high school that really only had one culture, and it's been amazing to meet people from all around the world here. So my question to you is, how can I learn more about different cultural clubs on campus?
Okay, Carlos.
Well, I would say, seek out the, Office of Student Life. That's where all the clubs are, our info is housed, and that's where a lot of them gather in the Student Activity Center. But also, the more you ask, the more you know, and you're getting the more info you're getting. So, there are professors who are advisors for certain clubs, and if you ask your professor, if they know of any club on cultural or just exposing different, diversity, then that's how you're going to know what's on campus. But there's also online tools where the club listing is posted. There's social media where you can find out through the Facebook group or page for the Office of Student Life. They also post events or things that matter with specific clubs. And the Office of Student Life is really good about making it known with the Education Week, where one day is particularly on cultures and different diversity at Montgomery College. So I think that would be the best way to go, is seek the Office of Student Life.
Anyone else? Well, I've got one more question myself that I've been sitting here as we've been talking. And it sounds like that we have presupposed that diversity is a great thing. But there may be some people that think it's not. So I'd like to ask, why are we celebrating this? Why is diversity and all the attention we're paying attention? Why are we doing that?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I do think there is a part of our culture, a part of our community that questions that. They may see diversity as a weakness. They may see diversity as something that's here, but why you got to make a big deal about it. They may see diversity as something that separates us, which I think is an interesting supposition in one of the questions that was posed earlier. I think the reason we celebrate diversity is because that's who we are. We celebrate who we are, our humanity. We celebrate our experiences. We talk about the new student who's coming to us for the first time out of their family to go to college. We talk about the veteran student who is coming back to college or re-experiencing college in a different time. We talk about the student who comes to our shore and is an immigrant and is trying to figure out what that's about. We talk about the Black lesbian president and who grew up on the south side of Chicago. All of that is a part of who we are. So if we don't, rather than celebrating diversity, I think we're celebrating our humanity. And we're taking an opportunity to recognize that those unique experiences that make you who you are bring value and worth to this community. Because I would not want to work and live in a place where it didn't exist at all.
It's part of higher education and where we are in 2014. I remember as an undergraduate school, the theme was creating diversity because the campus that I attended was not very diverse. When the multicultural movement was introduced, we began to value diversity. As though we didn't know what diversity was, but there was some value in studying it and acknowledging it and enjoying it. Here, the fact that we're celebrating it indicates that we've come a very long way from creating it, valuing it, but now actually embracing it and celebrating the diversity of our student population. And most importantly, it is what higher education is about. It's an opportunity for people, diverse peoples, whether they be Black, white, Asian, gay, in the armed services. We have an opportunity as participants in higher education to celebrate what makes us so unique in this particular environment.
Well, I think we have a question from the audience. Oh, wow. Yay.
Hi, my name is Mason Rockwell Buren. I am a Macklin Scholar and a Renaissance Scholar. And I had a question. It was kind of towards the gentleman's question on the student's second question about sort of bringing diversity into the classroom. And you guys made great points about sort of experiencing diversity outside the classroom, but I agree with him. Maybe we should bring diversity into the classroom. And there's a cool thing that the Renaissance Scholars do up at Germantown campus, and that's bringing sort of two different subjects into one class. The class I'm in right now is EN 190, which is literature, and PS 201, which is comparative politics. And basically what we're doing now is bringing the literature from all of these countries around the world, while at the same time understanding the politics of these countries. And we have a lot of diversity in the classroom. We have a veteran who talks about the different governments of the Middle East. We have a lady who is seeking political asylum, and she talks about her government. And then we have me, I talk about the American government. And it's really cool what the Renaissance Scholars are doing is just bringing all these different curriculums into one classroom and sort of experiencing these diversity in the classroom. So I was wondering, what is the potential of bringing these dyad courses together at the Rockville campus? I know we have Physics 2 and Calc 2 together, but what about bringing literature, women's studies, politics, and whatnot?
It's an interesting question.
I can speak to that as the dean responsible for scheduling the courses that are paired in learning communities is what we tend to call them, like the Renaissance Scholars, dyads. Sometimes we have to make the connection between disciplines for students through a paired, structured learning community. The challenge to that is our scheduling of classes so that we have enough students that understand that this is an important relationship to be made, that they're interested in taking both classes together, and that we really move forward in offering those courses if the enrollments are substantial or not. As an enrollment driven institution, it becomes difficult when that connection doesn't draw as many students like yourself that are inherently interested in studying those relationships and connections. But we've tried them, and we will continue to try them through the Learning Communities program. Different campuses are a little more successful than others.
I think the other thing I would just add to what Dr. Hawkins said is the fact that it also requires the institution to have the appropriate resources to create the space and place for faculty to be able to plan that. This phenomenal learning experience that you had requires an intentionality of 2 faculty members sitting down and aligning curriculum before you even walked into the door, and then every day being able to make sure that they have addressed the connections that were there, the disconnections that were not made, or the ones that were so oblivious, to enforce them again. And to be able to provide faculty with that space and place to do that is something the college also has to make sure we commit resources to. So obviously, it sounds like a phenomenal experience. I wish I was able to take that class, actually.
Okay, well, we have come to the point where we're going to have to ask for final words from each one of our panelists. This has just been a great discussion, and so we just appreciate, and I want to say thank you to you and to the audience today. And to our student video persons. It was just an awesome, awesome experience. So I think we'll start with Carlos.
2 things. One, as you walk into campus, be open-minded. Be aware that there are students who have different backgrounds, different experiences, and be understanding that as you interact with them, it will help you not only grow as a person, but be understanding of what they need as a human being, as a person. And number 2, just get involved. There are so many opportunities on campus and off campus to grow in understanding of what it means to be a culturally diverse community college and culturally diverse county where we live in. So.
I would say, I'm assuming you want me to go down the line? Yeah, okay. I would offer again 2 points very similarly. I have a little boy, and he came home the other day from school, and he commenced to tell me about the fact that there's Ethan from Korea, and there's such and such from India. And I mean, he literally went through 10 or 12 countries that is in his classroom right now, and then commenced to tell me that he thinks that he should be vegetarian because Raj doesn't eat meat, and he thinks that's very appealing. And I was very struck by that. But what I took from that was this complete willingness to think about something different and to celebrate that in a way that was, it's intuitive to him. Now, Mama, Diwali Day is coming, let's think about, and I'm like, well, let's look up Diwali Day, we need to figure this out. There is that earnestness and intentionality that, it's not even intentional, it's just there. So I would hope that we think about how we get to that point where we just celebrate and we open up ourselves to it. The second part of that, though, is because we are oftentimes as human in a place of fear when it comes to that. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable, and also be willing to ask questions. So what does that, why are you dressed that way? Why is this holiday so important to you? Why don't you eat for this month? What is that? And to know that sometimes we have to be thoughtful about how we ask the question, but also at the same time be willing to constantly express the need to know and have an earnest curiosity. So those are the 2 things that I would say.
Being here and representing veterans on this panel, I feel that one of the biggest things that I want to point out is that when you look at the veteran population, whether it be around the country or just even on this campus, I see within that group by itself an extremely diverse group of individuals. Even just some of the veterans that I've spoke to today could have come from Liberia or Ohio or Panama or Puerto Rico. And I know that many individuals they come to the U.S. because they love the experience of being an American. They'll take the time to be a part of this country and to in some way give back. They will also want to be a part of the very thing that protects this country. And but through that experience, I think, is what makes that particular population extremely unique. It's that experience of being overseas, being a warfighter, being part of this humongous entity, the DoD or the industrial military complex, however you want to see it. And it, like I said, even though this population is a direct microcosm of the entire society that it's sought to, they seek to protect, they also have an extremely unique experience that in some ways can also separate them. So there's just one piece that I'd like to put out there. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say, like, every and each person, they should be open-minded. They should interact with people. When they interact, they can experience how valuable the other person is from, like, culture, their lifestyle, and regardless of all differences that exist among the people that I deal with at the admission office, we make sure that at the admission office we treat people with respect, integrity, and we make sure that every student is included and endorsed, and no matter where they come from, we should make sure that we help them to reach their goal in life, as well to help them graduate from Montgomery College.
I just want to describe a situation that occurred a couple of weeks ago at a conference where I was attending on diversity and closing the achievement gap. There were a group of students who were very interested in reaching out to faculty members, but they didn't think the faculty members had the time and interest to help support them. At the same time, the faculty members were asked the same question, why aren't students reaching out to you? And they said, well, we're in our offices, they just don't want to come and talk to us. So my advice in closing words are, faculty are willing to speak to you, and you as students should know that you have the ability and are asked to go and approach your faculty members if you're uncomfortable, if you think that you're being treated with less respect than you deserve, to share your uniqueness and differences, and just take the initiative to move forward, because there's a disconnect between what students are expecting and what faculty are expecting. And I think if you just take the initiative and be very confident, that you'll be surprised at what you find when you enter a faculty member's door.
Well, this was just a great dialogue, but it's time to wrap the show up. And so thank you again. And so if the audience can please thank our participants. Please remember, if you have any comments about this show or suggestions of topics for a future show, please send an email to mc101otr@gmail.com. Thank you again for watching MC 101 on The Real. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah.